We can now bring in France 24's Wassim Nasr. Wassim, good to see you. The situation is evolving very, very quickly today.
Yes, actually, the situation is evolving since yesterday night, as you said, since the breaking of the truce of the ceasefire. We have a map. Maybe we'll look at the area to understand where does Soueida stand on the Syrian map. And here it is in gray. The purple color is the Israeli presence and advances since the fall of Assad, and the green is Syrian army control areas. And as you see, the road between Damascus and Soueida is the road that is being hit by Israeli Air Force since yesterday, actually. If we zoom into the town of Soueida, we'll see the latest advances of Syrian forces. So they actually took all of the city as we speak, still a few neighborhoods in the east of the city, and they are heading now to Qanawat that we see on the map. Qanawat is the stronghold of Hikmat al-Hijri, the Druze leader, which is like heading this opposition to Damascus.
Why is securing minorities a challenge for the new government in Damascus?
Well, actually, it's a huge challenge since it breaks all the political process that is being conducted by Damascus. Because we have to remember how it started. It started with a conflict between Bedouins in the area, meaning Sunni Bedouins, and some of the Druze community. Clashes evolved. Then the Syrian army sent its troops in order to make like a buffer force between the two, and 18 of them got killed by the Druze militias. And this is when the army went in force and tried to fight the Druze militias, meaning that the accord or the agreement that was upheld before with those same militias wasn't running anymore. And it's a huge also defiance for Damascus for its own troops, because we have to remember that more than 150 of its own troops were killed during the clashes. And here we see reinforcements going down from Idlib, heading to Soueida. That was yesterday night. But we also saw people demonstrating in the streets of Homs, meaning asking the Syrian government in Homs, in the Al-War neighborhood, this footage I got yesterday, asking the Syrian government to handle it and to end this problematic situation in Soueida, knowing that not all the Druze are against the government. Some of them, like Balaous, who spoke a few minutes ago, he is still for negotiations with Damascus, but it is more and more difficult for Damascus to handle its own and its own supporters, but also inside the Druze community, it's difficult to establish talks again with Damascus regarding the abuses that occurred since yesterday. So the road is still very difficult, since Al-Hijri, which is this religious Druze figure, is cornering actually everybody, his own population, his Druze, and Damascus.
Given that Syria has endured so many years of civil war and now al-Shara is trying to unite the country, does Israel risk worsening tensions, making the situation for the Druze worse, considering there are reports that it struck near the presidential palace and it struck the defense ministry twice today?
Yes, those are spectacular hits that occurred this morning, but actually they don't have an impact on what's happening on the ground.
In Soueida, yeah.
Because Syrian forces are still advancing in Soueida. What had impact on the ground was the Israeli intervention yesterday, which hit like military convoys and some tanks. But the fact is that tanks are still operating in Soueida, and even the Syrian forces are operating drones above Soueida against Druze militias, which Israel isn't preventing. So we are seeing Israel making spectacular acts, like hitting in the capital, but without any impact on the ground. And the reason of this intervention from Israel is the same as the first interventions by Israel, meaning it's responding to the Druze community in Israel, asking Netanyahu to act, meaning the religious head of the Druze community in Israel is Sheikh al-Trifi. He's very close with Sheikh al-Hijri that we mentioned, one of the prominent religious Druze leader in Syria, and he is pushing him to push Netanyahu in order to intervene. We saw demonstrations in the streets of Israel by the Druze community asking him to intervene on behalf of the Druze community in Syria. So the situation is very bizarre actually, because the Druze community in Syria was very pro-Assad before the fall of Assad, meaning against Israel.
Yeah.
So we are seeing like the cards being reshuffled. But anyways, the Israeli intervention is also cornering the Druze community as a whole, because as I told you, not all the Druze community is against Damascus. And I will end with this very important issue. We know that direct and indirect talks were conducted between Damascus, between the Syrian authorities and Israel, in the UAE, in Baku lately, in order to find an agreement, if not a peace agreement, but a kind of agreement. And talks were on the way. So also those talks will be halted because of this intervention by Israel, responding or because of internal political calculus made by Netanyahu towards the Druze community in Israel.
There were also some suggestions that Syria could even join the Abraham Accords, but now that seems to be placed on ice.
It won't be under the rule of Netanyahu anyway.
Thank you very much.